Our first speaker is a perfectly poised one for the conversation that's happening today. D2C brands have totally changed the landscape of retail, as we've talked about. And Eve Sleep, 6.5 years ago, was one of those brands that launched in the online mattress bedding sector and saw a huge growth, threw a load of money at marketing, then stopped and paused and rethought about how they were going to do that. Their brand has changed. They've now a big investor in television. So I think the journey and the story that we're going to hear from Eve Sleep is going to be a really interesting one. And we are so fortunate to actually have the CEO, Cheryl Calverley, joining us today. Cheryl has been a CMO, so she's a marketeer at heart, but she runs that business day to day. So I'm really looking forward to this. So over to you, Cheryl.
Thank you very much, and morning MADFEST. MADFEST asked me to come and talk about being a disruptor, and I have an early admission, which is this deck is not going to talk about disrupting at all. I think it's going to talk about some fairly classical principles of marketing. And I think that's my big takeaway, if you take nothing else out of this, is that no matter how much we talk about disruption and change, the classical principles of marketing, what makes people buy things and like things and buy things again, really haven't. Consumers and humans and brains just don't change that quickly. I've tried to put in here some useful stuff. There's a lot of words. I'm not going to talk it all through. People can access the deck afterwards. So I've tried to create something that people can actually take away and find useful in their own businesses. But I just want to talk to you a little bit about the story that Eve's gone through over the past couple of years. And, so 6.25 years old. And, I joined Eve back in 2018. And I kind of walked down a business where the business was saying, look, the marketing stopped working. We've done the thing that no one else has managed to do. We've managed to break marketing. We spent all this money and suddenly the sales are not following the spend. And I sat there and went, oh my God, have I actually walked into a business that has done the impossible and has found a way for marketing not to work? And if not, what the heck is going on? So the first thing I kind of did, and I think the first thing that most sort of marketers would do, is you sort of take a step back and you go, what is going on? And the best way to view what's going on in your business is to look at it through the lens of the classical 5 Ps, So I had a look and I had a proper think. And, Eve has got a really clear proposition. It's a mattress in a box delivered to your door with a 100-day trial and the promise of better sleep and better mornings as a result. And that proposition still stood. So it wasn't as though consumers had suddenly gone, I now don't want a mattress, I don't want it quickly, I don't want to sleep better. So we didn't fundamentally have a problem with the proposition. But on its own, that was no longer disruptive. That was no longer enough. And when you look at what had happened in the market, what you discovered was that on the promotion side, on the advertising side, and just generally in competition, we now had a raft of competitors. So what used to work in advertising didn't work anymore. Our share of voice had dropped dramatically. So it wasn't that we weren't great at our product and our customers weren't having a fantastic time, but they were just competitors outspending us. So, the first thing the business was doing was, well, we need to change the creative. And yes, you can look at the creative, but actually changing your creative doesn't help if fundamentally your share of voice has gone from 80, 90% share of voice to 20, 30% share of voice. So what we used to be doing was kind of no longer touching the sides. We then look at product, we used to be the only mattress in a box on the market, and now they're 10 a penny. So our product wasn't better and it wasn't different. And you've either got to be better or you've got to be different if you can't outspend your competitors. And we couldn't. So we needed to go and work hard on the product. Place. So we used to be on page 1 of Google search. Again, no competitors. Again, loads of work that Google did we hadn't kept up with. Our rankings had dropped and dropped. So we were now on page 3 or page 4. So we just weren't there to be found. So it doesn't matter how much marketing you spend. If people can't find you when they want you, you won't get bought. And fundamentally, our price, our competitors were selling products at sort of really, really, really deep discounts and ever deeper discounts. And at the same time, we'd been trying to sell at less discount because we've been suffering with, losses and reducing margin. So our pricing was no longer competitive. So, I walked in a business that said, look, the marketing stopped working. And what you actually find is you've now got strongly competitive market with people outspending you, a product that's not differentiated or better, difficult to find, and pricing that's no longer competitive. The issue is absolutely not the marketing. It's not how cool your adverts are. It's not what you're doing in TikTok. It's fundamentally the rest of the mix. That was all right, but that is a real headache. And so that little drawing to draw of myself is kind of how I felt having walked into what was meant to be a high growth business, enjoying the heady days of e-commerce startup. And actually, it's hard work. Sorting out your product, your proposition, your pricing, your place, all this stuff is really, really hard work. But it can be done, and it can be done really, really systematically. And you know, the way I always think about this is it's about getting your house in order before you spend money to invite guests around. Yeah, it's doing all those basics so that when people come, they have a great time, they stay. I love a good analogy. So I've just tried to break down here kind of what the steps are that we took to get our house in order. First thing we look at is your shop front. You know, if you ran a store, the first thing you do is you go, you know, is my shop working well? Can you get in the front door? Is it well located? It's the same thing for websites. So is the UX right? Does the site work hard? Is it navigable? Is the checkout working? Fundamentally, can people buy this product really easily when they want to? Next thing we look at is, you know, our product, you know, our customer experience. Is the customer experience right for our target audience? You know, it's in a young brand, word of mouth is disproportionately important. So getting that product right and making sure that when people have a great experience, they talk about it is more important in a young brand than it would be in a more mature brand where you've got years and years and years of history to ride from. So we did a load of work sorting out our product, sorting out our customer experience, making sure that when people went on Trustpilot, they went, that is amazing. I am sleeping better. It delivered on time. Love it, love it, love it. And place. You know, and in the digital world, place is search and SEO. You know, are we turning up where people want to find, so people can find us? Unless you've got your search and your SEO working really well organically, there's no point spending money on paid advertising because you're just trying to make up for the fact that you can't be found. And that's a really expensive hobby. So we spent a load of time sorting out our SEO, and we're still on that journey. But it really, really is probably one of the key accelerants. Within there also is things like affiliate marketing. You know, loads of people search mattresses and they read reviews. They read endless reviews on the independent. We need to make sure that we're in those places before we start spending money on advertising. And then finally, only then pick up your creative pen. Only then do you start to go, right, now I'm going to sort out that advertising. Now I'm going to find the meaningful difference about my brand, and I'm really going to talk about it. And, you know, my big advice to anyone looking to go, I need to, you know, to create my first proper piece of advertising, which is the journey a lot of scale-up businesses and disruptive businesses go on, is create narrowly, create really tightly for a target audience, a target mindset, a target benefit. You know, be really, really specific. The more specific you are in your target audience, the better and more distinctive your creative would be. And when you've done that, broadcast widely, really widely, as wide as you can afford, because fundamentally what you're talking to is a mindset, and the more people you talk to, the more people you'll find with that mindset. So we went from where we were broadcasting in lots of daytime TV, lots of sort of Sky Channel 205 direct response. We went to ITV and we put it in Love Island, and we put it in Bake Off. And we just said, we need to tell everyone that we're an amazing sleep wellness business. You're going to wake up and feel as good as this dancing sloth if you buy an Eve. And if you do all that and you've got all those steps underneath working, actually that broadcast advertising will start to cost in, and you'll start to find you can create you know, a profitable business. So that was kind of getting the house in order and you know, and then starting to invite people around. But then you start to go, right, you know, what next, and how do you make sure we're building for the future? And there is a real kind of sort of problem with going, how do you build for the future and do what you're doing now? But the future is only ever now. You never get to the future. You never turn around one day and go, oh, I'm now in the future. You're only ever in now. So if you don't build for the future now, you will never build for the future. So one of the challenges you have as a marketeer, but also as a sort of scale up and startup brand, is constantly balancing, is what I'm doing setting us up for a very different business in 2 or 3 years, because we're going through rapid growth. You know, so I always talk about build for tomorrow whilst you grow for today. And that's a mindset more than anything else. It's about choosing your investments so that they are long-term and sustainable. I tend to see this in sort of 3 little bubbles. I see most things in 3 bubbles. I'm kind of that sort of thinker. You know, on the top left, so invest now for future efficiency. And this is almost back to that sort of that ladder picture. Always be thinking about what's sitting underneath your business and is going to drive constant efficiency as you spend more and more. So data, content, e-commerce performance, tech capability, making sure that engine that will continue to make the most value out of your customers and your data is building and building and building and is ever improving. Investment for the future there will almost always pay back in a 1 to 2 year horizon. Investing now for future growth. So brand awareness, brand consideration, really strong creative assets, invest in strong creative assets, and then sweat them. Our marketers have a terrible habit of magpieing around and going, I want a new ad, I want a new ad, I want a new ad. Don't do that. Build an asset where they plan to sweat that asset, and then you can invest in that asset because you know that you invested in something that you're going to amortize over 3 or 4 years, and you have the confidence to invest properly, have a high quality asset, and you'll stretch it and stretch it. I mean, our Sloth, he's everywhere, and he's a massively powerful brand asset because we invested in it. And continuous product improvements is here. Don't get caught out like we did. Don't turn around one day and go, shit, I've enjoyed 3 or 4 years of rapid growth because I was first to market with a new product, but now there's 10 people like me. If I were Peloton right now, and I'm sure they are, I'd be shitting myself because I'm surrounded by Mirror and Tonal and any number of home stuff, and my first to market is gone. Netflix, look what happened when Disney launches and Amazon Prime launches. Suddenly they're not the only product around, and they've got to really work on their product, and it's not as though they weren't. So continuously improving your product and making sure that you are on a par with, if not ahead of, your key competitor product. And the most important thing is investing now for people capability. And that's not just about your own team. That's about the whole gamut. So team development capability, research, consumer insight, understanding your consumers and how they're changing all the time, and strong agency relationships. Really good agency relationships provide you the room to grow, because you never know when you might need to do 2 or 3 times what you can do in-house. And having those relationships means you can instantly flex and you're not stalled by that. And there's a great phrase. This is my friend Megan over at KFC. I've nicked this. So anyone who works at KFC, you'll know this. But she always talks about sales overnight, brand over time, and I think that is a great way of thinking about it. Just so the growing pains are worth it. They really are. At the very end of all this, we are now in a place where we are, delivering consistently improving profits. I mean, we're still loss making. We'll get there. And it's really, really difficult, and you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And then suddenly one day you do, and you really sort of get over that tipping point. And then you're in a place where you can go, now I can confidently grow. Now I can invest again, and now I can push on for my next stage of growth. So, in summary, I was right. And this year definitely wasn't like I expected. But then, what year is? I don't think I've ever finished a year and gone, well, this is a year that was very predictable. People still people. Building brands is still building brands, make great products that people want, can easily find, tell them about them with advertising, entertains and draws them in. The whole thing it's just not voodoo. It's really, really simple. It's straightforward. It's systematic, and it's not changed. And that is a little story of Eve's sleep.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you so much for kicking us off this morning and for such an honest, candid view of the world, which is great to hear. I'd love to maybe first start by asking you, because I know you did an interview in Marketing Week where you talked about kind of going from CMO to CEO. I'd love to hear kind of your reflections of how you looked at marketing. You've obviously just shared some of that there around the need for marketing to actually deliver to the bottom line. What was the main thing or a couple of things that changed when you moved into that role?
Moved into CEO.
Yeah.
I think, marketing is the full mix. Marketing is not advertising, it's not product, it's not price, it's the full mix. And I think as CEO, you are much more able to have conversations about, what does a change in my logistics partner mean for my product offering? What does a change in my supplier base mean for my customer experience? So you're able to connect properly end to end with the customer at the center. And I personally believe that's why marketers make excellent CEOs, particularly of consumer goods businesses, because they understand, they start from the customer and thinking about how everything affects the customer. And it means your instinctive decision making is customer centric.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you also touched on like the importance of understanding how, I guess, brand and being in the right places drives some of your kind of more performance channels. And there are a lot of D2C businesses like yourselves that are kind of stuck in this last click attribution world where they haven't really. So how did you go through that journey? Because many have struggled to kind of realize that you need to invest in the bigger brand TV world. I'd love to hear some reflections on that, if you don't mind.
I think it's only when you've got a burning platform. So, it's when the competition gets fierce and the last click stops costing in, or you can't get to the growth anymore because you've sort of saturated your market and the CPA is untenable. At that point, you've really got to go, right, how do I get to the next set of audiences? And honestly, that is about going out to a more broadcast, more brand positioning. But doing that without thinking through all the things underneath will not cost in. But if you've got all the engine working underneath, if you've got the right product with the right website, with the right search, with really, your maximum efficient performance marketing, when you go to brand, everything else improves, and your price elasticity improves, everything gets a bit better. You do have to have the runway in the business, though. You have to be able to say, I can accept this cost, not costing in for 2 years.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, don't do it, because you won't get to long term. You're going to die first.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I suppose you also need to build buy-in and belief from investors in the business as well, right?
You do, but my experience is investors are the first people to be asking about what you're doing with your brand. Investors are investing in the long term of business broadly. Even the most short-term investor is going, the share price has a future 2-year value built into it. And if you're sitting there saying, I'm not investing in brand, I'm not investing in growth, your share value will not be, or your value for the business will not be what it could be.
Yeah, makes total sense. And last question I have from the audience is, do we expect Eve Sleep to go into new products? You've obviously spent some time making sure your current product is on point and kind of ahead of the competition. Where next for Eve Sleep?
So we're building a sleep wellness business. So all of our investment is building out a strong enough brand proposition to allow us to go into new products, new territories fairly easily, and new sort of services and content. So I absolutely would expect to see us in a couple of years in a whole load more places than we are today. The biggest challenge with an e-commerce business is you are narrow in your place, so everything is about broadening your presence and creating that mental and physical availability. That then means I can invest less in paid for marketing.
Makes total sense, and also makes sense why you're investing in that brand and keeping close to what consumers want. Look, Cheryl, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us this morning. Unfortunately, we need to move on, but it's been hugely insightful.
Thank you.